1. Anyway.
Stewart seems to be from another world.
James Stewart is the fastest Supercross rider on the planet.
James Stewart, the fastest man on the planet. The kid from Florida who didn't just win races, he rewrote how motocross is ridden. From the moment he showed up, it was clear. This wasn't just another rider lining up on the gate. Stewart was a storm. He brought a new style, a new energy, and a weight no one else carried. Because every lap wasn't just about winning, it was about proving he belonged in a sport that never expected him. Bartow, Florida, December of 1985. Big James brings his newborn son home from the hospital. Before the kid even hits the crib, Big James fires up his KX250, cradles his baby boy in one arm, and lets the clutch out. 3 days old, and James Stewart Jr. is already on a dirt bike. That's how it started.
The day that James came home from the hospital, before I ever took him in the house, I crunk up my KX250 and I give him a ride on the bike. He was 3 days old, and I kind of eased off the clutch and took off, and then I was one-handed holding him and riding the bike.
The Stewarts didn't have much. Bills went into a hat each month. Pull one out, that's the one that got paid. Racing wasn't a hobby, it was a gamble the whole family rode together. By 4 years old, little Bubba was already shredding local tracks.
Young James Stewart Jr., a rider we're seeing and hearing from more and more lately.
By the time most kids are learning to ride a bicycle, he was already collecting trophies.
Tell them to watch it. Now I ain't talking my pockets, just know we ain't running out the way that we stock it. If I got it, you got it. If I call it, she slide and tell it.
But every time they pulled into a new track, the family carried more than gas cans and gear bags. They carried the weight of being different. Racism wasn't hidden. One promoter flat out told Big James, "We don't race black kids here." His reply, "Good, I came here to race motorcycles." That was the energy that fueled them.
I faced it a lot. I remember we went to this track up in Alabama. The guy looked at me and he said, "We don't race niggers here." And I said, "Good, I come here to race a motorcycle." James, he was little. He said, "Dad, what that man say?" I said, "Don't worry about it, son. It's all good. Let's go ahead and kick that butt and we go home."
It didn't hit me until my first year in pro that I was different from everybody else. I mean, if you would ask me, I probably said I was white. You know, people would boo me, for getting second and, cheer a third place guy. It didn't register me that I'm black and they're white. And I never paid attention because at the end of the day, I was just trying to beat them.
Through it all, Bubba just kept winning. 11 Loretta Lynn titles, 80-plus amateur victories. Every gate drop, every lap, it became harder for the sport to ignore the kid from Florida. He wasn't just fast, he was undeniable. But the higher he climbed, the louder the doubts got. And when he turned pro at 16, the whole world was about to see if the hype was real.
I ride from 4 to dark. We got 31 acres, so I usually run that a couple times a day. And when I get back in, I start doing my homework and do it all over again. I got 7 national championships at Loretta. So.
2002, Stewart rolls into the West Coast Supercross series as a 16-year-old rookie. He's not lining up against kids anymore. Now it's seasoned pros, veterans with factory contracts, and years of gate drops in their back pockets. None of that mattered. By his second race, Bubba is already standing on the box. He was the youngest to win an AMA 125/250SX main event in 2002.
Tedesco, and look at this, here comes Stewart to the inside.
Oh, this kid is unbelievable.
Tucker, and the 125 shootout victory for James Stewart.
On your second pro race, you get your first ever victory. You have already got your first professional record. You are now the youngest winner ever in EA Sports Supercross.
The way he rode that year wasn't cautious, wasn't calculated. He wasn't tiptoeing his way into the class. Stewart ripped into the scene like he was born for it. By the time the series wrapped, he wasn't just some kid with hype. He was a legitimate threat. Outdoors that summer, pure dominance. 10 of 12 rounds went Bubba's way. He became the youngest national champion the sport had ever seen, and the first black rider to take a title at that level. Those numbers don't just happen. That was raw speed, a riding style nobody else could match, and the kind of confidence that only comes when you know you're different. But the deeper story of that rookie season wasn't just in the trophies. Stewart was racing 2 battles every weekend. On the track, he was smoking the field. Off it, he was still hearing boos when he finished second. Still hearing slurs yelled from the fence line. Fans would cheer a third-place white rider over Bubba's second. He admitted later, "If you'd asked me back then, I probably would have said I was white." That's how invisible he wanted to feel sometimes. Yet, every time he lined up, he shut it all down the only way he knew how. With speed. His rookie year was more than a debut. It was a statement. He wasn't here to just be part of motocross. He was here to redefine it. And right when everyone thought they'd seen the full picture of Bubba Stewart, the wins, the style, the kid rewriting the record books, he dropped something on the sport that would change motocross forever. Budds Creek, 2003. Stewart rips off the line and immediately gets tangled up.
Unbelievable record. He's already the youngest 125 national champion. He's the first African-American national champion right there.
Dead last. 40th place.
Whoa, somebody already going down. James Stewart is in dead last, 40th place.
For most riders, that's the end of the moto, not for Bubba. He starts slicing through the pack like he's late for something, and then it happens. He comes into a jump, but instead of launching high like everyone else, he lays the bike flat, drags it sideways, and stays so low, it looks like he's cheating physics. The announcers can't believe it. Fans can't process it. What the hell did we just see? That was the birth of the Bubba Scrub.
True Bubba Scrub happens when you have the perfect mix between speed and commitment.
The Scrub wasn't just a trick, it was a revolution. By killing airtime, Stewart carried speed where no one else could. He turned jumps into straightaways. He found time where nobody thought time existed. It looked reckless, but it was precise.
David, this kid is unbelievable. He stays lower than anybody else.
And suddenly every kid on every practice track in America was trying to figure it out. Overnight, Bubba had changed the language of motocross. This wasn't some little flourish like a whip for the fans. The Scrub was a weapon. It was the difference between winning and losing at the elite level. And the crazy part? Stewart pulled it out under pressure, climbing from dead last through the field. That's when it clicked for the sport. James Stewart was reprogramming the game in real time. From that point on, every lap he rode felt like watching someone from the future. His style was all aggression and flow at the same time. He stayed so low, so fast, it was like he'd found another gear no one else had access to. The Scrub became the signature of James Stewart, and the rest of the world had no choice but to follow. Fans started calling him the fastest man on the planet. And the thing was, they weren't wrong. Watching Bubba ride was like watching a cheat code, but it was all skill, all nerve. He wasn't just racing anymore. He was showing us what motocross could be. And when you've got a rider like that, it doesn't take long for rivalries to form. Stewart's next chapter? 2 names, Ricky Carmichael and Chad Reed. And those battles would become the stuff of legend. Every era of motocross has its rivalries. But when James Stewart lined up against Ricky Carmichael and Chad Reed, it wasn't just racing, it was theater. First Carmichael, the GOAT the machine. Every lap, Carmichael was precise, relentless, grinding the competition into dust. Stewart was the opposite, raw, unpredictable, all flair and aggression. When they clashed, it wasn't just 2 riders going bar to bar. It was 2 philosophies of riding colliding. The GOAT versus the prodigy. Perfection versus chaos. Every time they hit the track together, fans knew they were about to see something they'd be talking about for years.
He was older than me, but he was also like still in my, era where I was watching him in, 80s class when I was getting out, 50s and beginning in 60s. So, we always kind of had a relationship. And then when you go pro, just the competitor nature, we were like friends and we were cordial, but we raced each other.
Then came Chad Reed. If Carmichael was the immovable object, Reed was the immovable rival. Reed and Stewart didn't just race each other, they hunted each other. Their battles had an edge that felt personal.
3, 2, 1.
I'm at, turn the city up. I can flip a dog to a million. I don't like to brag, but I'm really on. 3, 2, 1. Anywhere I'm at, turn the city up. 3, 2, 1. I don't like to brag, but I'm really on. It's a new day, days been new. Been a decade since I made it out of ring 2.
Block passes that bordered on disrespect. Retaliation in the next corner, neither one willing to give an inch. Stadiums erupted as they traded blows lap after lap. Fans weren't just watching, they were picking sides. You were either Team Reed or Team Bubba, and there was no in-between. What made it special was how different each battle felt. Carmichael versus Stewart was the clash of titans, where history was on the line. Reed versus Stewart was pure drama, the kind of rivalry where pride mattered as much as points. And through it all, Bubba's style was the wild card. He could do things on a bike that nobody else would even try, and that's what kept everyone glued to their seats. These rivalries gave us the sport at its purest, raw competition with nothing held back. It wasn't just about who crossed the finish line first. It was about legacy. Every block pass, every scrub, every time Bubba dove inside or Reed squared him back up, those moments became folklore. By the late 2000s, James Stewart wasn't just another champion. He was the show. People came to watch what insane thing he'd do next, whether it ended with his arms in the air or his bike cartwheeling across the dirt. And that winner crash trying mindset would carry him to his peak and cost him just as much. 2008, Stewart comes back from a blown ACL. Most riders take that kind of injury and spend a season trying to get back to speed. Not Bubba. He shows up outdoors and doesn't just win, he sweeps. 24 motos, 24 wins, a perfect season. Only one other rider had ever done it, Ricky Carmichael. Now James Stewart's name is on that same impossible line. That summer felt unreal. Every gate drop, you knew he was going to smoke the field. It wasn't cockiness, it was inevitability. He was riding on another level. For fans, it was a privilege, like watching Jordan drop 60 or Tiger in his prime. Every lap he made the impossible look routine, but with Stewart, there was always the other side of the coin. His win or crash trying mentality meant that when things went wrong, they went really wrong. High-speed get-offs that left fans holding their breath. The kind of crashes where you don't know if the guy's getting back up. And yet, somehow Bubba kept coming back. That's the paradox of James Stewart. The brilliance and the brutality came as a package. You couldn't separate them. He wasn't wired to settle for second. If he couldn't win, he'd go out swinging, even if it meant leaving the bike in a heap. By the end of his run, Stewart stacked up 2 Supercross titles in the premier class, 1 outdoor 450 championship, plus his 2 125 Supercross titles. He'd joined the pantheon, not just on numbers, but on aura. He had a perfect season, he had the highlight reels, and he had the respect of riders who knew they'd never seen anyone like him. But the injuries piled up, the pressure mounted. And then came the one thing even James Stewart couldn't scrub past. A suspension that would cut him down right as he was supposed to be in his prime.
Broke James Stewart, suspended by the FIM.
2009, Stewart rolls into Supercross on a new bike, a Yamaha, and the season turns into one of the greatest battles the sport has ever seen. Him and Chad Reed going at it all year long, trading wins, trading elbows, trading momentum. It was an all-out war. By the time the series reached the finale in Las Vegas, everything was on the line. 17 rounds had come down to one night, one gate drop. Reed had the experience, Stewart had the speed. That main event felt like a heavyweight title fight in neon lights. Stewart held on, sealed the championship, and became a 2-time Supercross champ. For a kid who started his pro career blowing the doors off the 125 class, this was the crown jewel. Proof he could not only dominate but survive the grind of a full season against the toughest rival of his career. But Stewart's style didn't lend itself to safe defenses of titles. Winner crash trying wasn't a slogan, it was his DNA. And in the years that followed, fans got both sides of it in full. Some nights, Bubba looked untouchable, scrubbing past the best in the world like they were stuck in second gear. Other nights, he was pushing past the edge, sometimes ending the night in the dirt with a season hanging in the balance. 2010 was a taste of that roller coaster. A season-opening win reminded everyone who he was, but injuries cut him down almost immediately.
Oh! James Stewart has just launched off his bike! This is an absolute disaster!
Every time I get hurt, I'm like, man, I don't want to do this anymore.
2011 brought more flashes of brilliance, race wins, explosive speed, but also more crashes that fueled the critics. For every jaw-dropping pass, there was another DNF. Fans were split. Half of them calling him reckless, half of them calling him revolutionary. Either way, nobody looked away when number 7 lined up. That unpredictability, that chaos, was the very thing that made him the most electrifying rider in the sport. Love him or hate him, you couldn't ignore him. By 2012 and 2013, Stewart was bouncing between flashes of dominance and more setbacks. He grabbed wins in both Supercross and Motocross, even switching to Suzuki and pulling off big rides that showed he still had the raw speed to beat anyone. But the consistency never returned. He could still torch a field on the right night, but the wrecks kept piling up. For every perfect scrub, there was a mangled bike and a season cut short. Still, through all the chaos, Bubba remained the headline. Reed and Carmichael were legends. Filippo was stacking titles. Dungey was Mr. Consistency. But Stewart was the draw. He was the reason fans filled stadiums, the reason highlight reels went viral, the reason every kid in the pits was still trying to throw a scrub like Bubba. That's what made the next chapter so hard to swallow. By 2014, Stewart wasn't just another rider trying to hang on at the end of his career. He was still the sport's most electrifying name, the one fans paid to see, the one who made every lap feel like something crazy was about to happen. So when the suspension came down, it hit different. It wasn't just a ban. It was the lights going out on the most exciting rider the sport had ever seen.
Crazy. That suspension basically ruined the rest of my career, any kind of comeback.
2014. Stewart is still fast, still pulling wins, still proving he can hang with the new wave. Then the hammer drops. A failed drug test. Not steroids, not blood doping. Adderall. A prescription he'd been taking for years, but without the proper paperwork filed with the FIM. On paper, it was a technicality. In reality, it became a 16-month ban that gutted his career. The punishment didn't fit the crime, and everyone knew it. Stewart said it himself. "I'm not a cheater. I wasn't on HGH or anything like that." That suspension basically ruined the rest of my career, and he wasn't wrong. At his age, with his style, missing more than a season wasn't just a setback, it was a death sentence for his prime. Fans felt robbed. The sport lost one of its biggest stars overnight, and there was no telling if he'd ever come back the same.
I think it cost a lot of people, including myself, more chances to see me race, and win. I definitely wouldn't be sitting at 50 wins right now. It'd be more than that, so.
For Stewart, it was personal. After everything he'd given motocross, the wins, the innovation, the spotlight, it felt like the industry had turned its back on him. He tried to come back after the ban, but it wasn't the same. The crashes hit harder, the recovery took longer, and the young guns were faster every year. The gate drops he did make almost felt like cameos, reminders of what once was. And that's the cruel truth of the Stewart story. His prime years, the window where he could have stacked more titles, maybe passed 50 Supercross wins, maybe gone down as the undisputed number 1, gone. Not because he slowed down, not because the fire died, but because of a suspension that treated a paperwork screw-up like a felony. For Bubba, it was the hardest chapter. For the fans, it was a what-if that'll never be answered. And by 2016, the writing was on the wall. Stewart quietly stepped away, and 3 years later, he made it official. He was done. By 2016, James Stewart had lined up for the last time. Washougal. He finished 15th overall. No fanfare, no farewell tour, no big announcement, just a quiet fade from the gate. For a rider who built a career on fireworks, that exit felt almost surreal. 3 years later, he made it official. "I've retired," and yet retirement didn't erase what he'd done. Stewart had already carved his place into motocross history. 2 Supercross titles in the Premier Class, 1 Outdoor 450 Championship, 2 125 Supercross titles, 122 professional wins across Supercross and Motocross, a perfect outdoor season, and of course, the move that changed riding forever, the Bubba Scrub. But numbers only tell half the story. What really cemented Stewart's legacy was the way he rode. Nobody before or since has looked like Bubba on a bike. Low, fast, on the edge of disaster, and somehow in control. He didn't just ride the line, he redrew it. And then there's the cultural weight. Stewart was the first black rider to reach the top of the sport. He took the boos, the slurs, the doubt, and he turned it all into speed. For every young rider who ever felt out of place at the track, Stewart was proof that there was room at the gate. He didn't just win for himself, he opened doors for everybody behind him. In 2022, the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame inducted him. A full circle moment.
Earning a nickname of the fastest man on the planet is quite an achievement, one James Bubba Stewart Jr. certainly lived up to throughout his career.
There are very few people that ever left me awestruck standing by this side of the track, but you did it so many times like you lost count, and truly the fastest man on the planet, but also the most talented motorcycle rider I ever saw throw his leg over a Supercross motocross bike. So, James Stewart, it's our great honor to induct you in the AMA Hall of Fame.
From backyard motos in Florida, bills pulled from a hat, racism at the gate, to standing as one of the most iconic riders in the history of motocross. Now, with his role as a commentator, he's back in the sport in a new way, breaking down races, sharing stories, and still shaping the culture. James Stewart's career was brilliance and heartbreak, innovation and controversy. But above all, it was impact. He left motocross different than he found it. And that's the mark of a true legend.
Although Stewart is more successful than he ever imagined, changing the complexion of his sport may be his greatest achievement.
Definitely, I see a lot more black people come to the races, a lot more than it was in the past, and I see a lot more kids that's trying to race and stuff, so I feel like I had an impact that way.
It's James Stewart.
Want me to sign, buddy?
He's got 2 heroes, and Mickey Mouse is one, and you're the other. So.
James, being African American, I mean, it brought in a whole slew of different people. It's positive for our sport. It's huge for our sport. He's broken down the walls.
I think it's important for me to tell my story that, man, you can do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter what color or race. I feel like I'm a living example of that.
So now it's your turn. What's James Stewart's greatest legacy? Was it the Bubba Scrub, the rivalries, or simply the way he changed how motocross is ridden? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want even more Stewart, check out our deep dive on 12 moments that made James Stewart a legend. Thanks for watching and stay wicked.